Good morning, everybody. Thank you for watching Taxes Made Easy here on the. So, I'm just kind of brain farting this morning. It's been a crazy morning. There's so much news that's come out in the last couple of days, and a lot of it's very concerning for our market. And for our economy. So we're gonna talk about it, kind of break it down. But also, I want to focus on one of the things coming up in just over a month. We have our third quarter estimated tax payment deadline coming up. So if you're not aware of that, you should be. So again, I've been trying to hammer out on that, and we've got a lot to cover. So stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. Again, thank you for watching live or on rebroadcast on the smartmoneyculture.tv. I had my little brain fart earlier about that. Again, lots of news that's come out. This morning, we had Harris announced her running mate. So, again, you want to jump to the first AP article here, and it talks about who is her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. So this is official. It's just come out. All the news sources are reporting on this, and so I think we finally have a race. We finally have two candidates with vice president. Again, it's around about. Feels like it's very late in the game, just a few months before the election, and both conventions have already finished. So, I don't know if that's part of the strategy for both parties to pick their running mates so late. But for Harris, she didn't have really much of a choice. So to be fair, so who is Tim Walz? And I think it's very telling looking at different sources. Here's the Associated Press. Again, they're going to be a lot more favorable to him. They don't really talk about his policies too much at all, but I do think it's interesting to know who is he. So, high school social studies teacher. He was a football coach, union member, and served 24 years in the Army as an enlisted, as an enlisted service member, and he rose to the command of sergeant major. So that is a feat in itself. So good for him. Thank you for his service. I think it's good to have veterans on there. I believe J.D. Vance also served. So that to me, I would give anybody kudos, and I think we need to have more politicians that have actually served our military. So moving a little bit further down. So what are some of his policies? This is where it gets a little harder to parse it out. It's one of the few states to protect fans buying tickets online for Taylor Swift concerts. So again, he's been against price gouging, and that's all this says. Doesn't give very much information, but I think just kind of going over it, doesn't talk about his tax, his ability to work with taxes or anything like that, or economic preferences, but it is very much, he's a social liberal. So very much in favor of gay, transgender rights, and abortion, and abortion pretty much on demand. But at the same time, and this going to a more conservative article from townhall.com saying it's the most extreme. He's pretty much Joe Biden. And one of the concerns here, and it's interesting that they don't highlight some of his social issues where he's very much to the left of most politicians, but also on immigration. So they talk a lot about in this article about who they didn't select. I don't want to focus on that. it's immigration where he's been very much open borders, sanctuary cities, and that's been his policy. So I think we're going to learn a lot more about who Governor Walz is and what his policy positions. But it sounds like they took the Biden Harris and now it's Harris Walz. Not much difference in policy at all. They're both pretty. Harris was to the left of Biden, and arguably the only person for the left in Harris is Bernie Sanders. So that's where we're coming with. That's the Democrat ticket right now. And there's going to be plenty of articles, plenty of news coming out about it. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on about it, but I think that is big news. And I think it's interesting that apparently Tim Walz is a people person. He can reach out and talk to average individuals, which I think is important. And I think his union background as well as military background is not something to be overlooked. Regardless of his politics, I do think it's good to have military members serving and represented in the government. Jumping to the next article, this is kind of an off-the-wall topic, which is kind of what's buried in the middle. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but this is from National Pulse. Niger, we built up a military base in Niger, and now we're Monday announced that the complete withdrawal of our troops and assets from this base. So do we want troops all over the world? Some people say no. It is important for force projection. It is important for influence. We do help and support countries across the world by having military bases, and it actually helps the U.S. provide forward support. The underlying issue here, so again, it underwent significant improvements and recently, and we're not going to be able to enjoy. We're just going to be turning the base over because we're no longer welcome. And we've been targeting Islamic extremists and Al Qaeda in the region. Why? July of 2023, a year ago, a pro-Russian military junta took over Niger. So the Western-backed president is no longer in power. So again, kind of harkens back to the 80s, where we had Russia and the United States vying for influence over countries all across the world. And apparently Russia has been doing this. So it's happened in Mali, Burkina Faso, and other states in the region where Russia goes in, supports people that are very anti-West and pro-Russia, and flips this and happening where we have bases or influence. So not a positive development. Good that the troops are coming home, but at the same time, this does look like a military retreat, and not a good thing for our country or our influence in the world. So we talk about having a positive influence throughout the world. This is not a good improvement, especially if you have extremists, pro Al Qaeda forces taking over the government. So next article here. This is just an NPR article, and I think it's interesting that this is being talked up in the United States. So NPR is supposed to be public news radio. They're anything but, they're not moderate at all. But this is something that's been bandied about, and even Janet Yellen takes turns throwing cold water on this idea, but then saying, well, this would be nice, but it's never going to happen, The far left, or the left, is talking up this idea of a global tax. And this is a global tax not on income, but on all assets. So how would this help? I guess it's a yearly tax on total wealth. And it's like, oh, it's only going to be 2%. But is this a yearly tax that's going to happen year after year where they take 2% of people's total wealth that they've accumulated? And again, this is being hosted by the Brazilian government, and then would impact the 3,000 wealthiest people in the world But here's the catch: the majority of those are in the United States. The United States has a much larger percentage. So it really is wealth distribution from the United States to the rest of the world. How would this money be used? How would it be distributed? Anybody's guess, but usually if you're doing it through the UN, do not bank on this money being used wisely. A lot of these taxes end up in the hands of often terrorist organizations, the worst enemies of the United States. So, and they're saying, how do you do coordinated global attacks when key countries like the United States, the biggest key country, is not on board? So again, they talk about it. They say that the big reasons, and the whole idea is that they need more and more money. Governments need more money to do what they want to do. And also Germany's also fighting this as well. It's not just the United States. And here U.S. Secretary Yellen said she wasn't on board with the idea. It's too extreme an idea. But they're trying to figure out a possible path forward to do this. So in the United States, we have plenty of revenue. We just spend it on all the wrong things. We have no financial discipline. And I think that's going to be really the crux of what we're going to talk about today, is that you have to have financial discipline. You have to control your spending, know where your income is going. I'm sorry, I wasn't sharing this tab. So again, the NPR article, really to have good financial spending by the government and control, you need to have financial discipline. So we had a huge hit. And I'm just going to introduce this because we're coming up on another break soon, in just about a minute. If you didn't hear, end of last week, yesterday, huge crash. And it wasn't just in the United States, it was global. So what the U.S. does, what happens to the U.S. economy, affects other markets throughout the world. So you had a huge dramatic pullback, third in as many trading days. So it started Thursday and Friday. And then yesterday it dropped 1,034 points, or 2.6%. But if you add up what happened on Thursday and Friday, it was another 2%, 2.6%. So I think it was like a 500 drop on Thursday, another 800 on Friday, and then yesterday, huge hit. So overall market correction, double that number. NASDAQ had a huge hit at 3.4%. S&P dropped 3%. Across the board, huge hits. And we are out of time, so we'll cover this when we come back. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, everybody. And just going to continue on with the news here. The stock market had a huge correction. Now, one of the concerns is that a lot of this crashed based on the jobs, a worse than expected jobs report. So again, it came in. Unemployment rose from 4.1% to 4.3%, which is a huge jump in just one report or 1 month. And just 114,000 jobs were added. That's just general numbers that are reported. It doesn't count how many jobs were lost. So again, when they look at jobs added, really you need to be well above 200,000 to have positive growth in jobs. So this is a huge indication that overall the market lost jobs, the economy lost jobs, especially, which is why unemployment went up, and it's a very concerning sign. So that is part of it, but the article goes on and talks about not only did this hit foreign countries as well, but one of the explanations for this is that it was just a sell-off. So Berkshire Hathaway, one of the biggest ones, they did a lot of investments, especially in tech, and it went up, and then they made a huge gain on this. So it went up 30% in 6 months, and to have a correction like this is not uncommon when we've had things increase. So again, if you are investing, if you have your money out there, don't just sell because the market crashes. Stay in it for the long haul. You have short-term traders trying to make that kind of profit. But it is an indication that things are volatile in the market right now. People are concerned about the United States entering possible recession territory. So again, jumping to the next article here. This is from CNN. Global stock markets in the day sharply lower than before. And so really kind of want to go into this. This is going to dovetail nicely to where we're going to finish up here, which is the Fed rate and Fed policy. Why the economy is set for now? Because when they change rates, people might react in the short term, but the market might go up or down. But there's a lag between what the Fed does and when we actually see that money flow through the economy and have an effect on this. So the Fed has been, we've been keeping the interest rates high, and they're claiming that it's crushed inflation here. One of the big concerns here, though, is this is not real inflation. And I love it when you have, sorry not to bag on CNN, but it's easy to bag on CNN. If people think inflation is down to 2%, you are not out there buying groceries. You are not out there trying to rent homes. Things are still higher than ever. And again, there's very little comfort for consumers out there. Now, because things are slowing down, they're saying it's really dampened inflation, but real inflation is still much higher than what their government numbers show, which is part of the problem. People don't believe the government numbers because everybody knows they're distorted and in a serious way. And this article doesn't mention that at all. But their argument is that their whole goal is to stop inflation, curb inflation, because out of control inflation hurts everybody. But if you keep the rates too low for too long or too high for too long, it can hurt, cause people to lay off or not hire more staff. So the whole idea between having higher rates is to cool the economy down. And so here's the point. We won't know for many months ahead because the U.S. economy is set for the time being. So it's reacting to what the rates have been. And so even if we cut now, we're not going to see the real effects until the spring of next year. So the Fed, by playing with the levers here on the economy, isn't causing real growth. They're just playing with a monetary number that can encourage or discourage, but it doesn't. It's a small lever on a huge economy, and often times it's abused or they're reacting. They don't really know what they're doing here. Um, so the biggest danger is everyone sees the market falling and gets panicked, spending stops, and it becomes a cycle of more jobs are lost. And that's the cycle of when we really go into recession. Um, so one positive note, back in 2022, they were having issues. Inflation was going crazy. Rates were at zero. The Fed all had little room to maneuver the economy, to boost the economy, because the rates were already at zero, which again creates a bubble, distorts the economy. I would love to see the Fed. Again, the way they play with it isn't the real elephant in the room here. And so, and again, whatever they play with isn't going to be solved anytime soon. So the Fed can certainly get the economy to a better place, but probably not before we've all suffered a bit more pain. By dropping the rates, though, inflation could take off again, and it's really higher than the official numbers. They're saying it's at 2.6%. When you look at the real numbers, you look at food, housing, energy, which is those all areas that have climbed dramatically. It's probably closer to 7 or 8% inflation right now. Now, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, he's catching all kinds of heat now, saying, "Look, you kept the interest rates too high." And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these. And again, there's a lot of criticism going back and forth. Trump has called them out and said, "Hey, they're going to drop the rates right before the election." And he's criticized them and saying that's what they're probably going to do. Well, as the economy softens, that's probably what they'll do. And they're catching a lot of heat for not doing it already. So again, this article really talks about the politics. Funny article of for rent, studio apartment, it's a garbage can. A lot of different questions here about going back and forth, talking about the same things that we've talked about. The 114,000 new jobs created being very weak, but this article claims we're not in a recession yet, but it's moving towards weakness. It's got all the signs of heading towards a recession. So they're asking the Fed to act, despite the accusations that they would be interfering with the political election. This article really does argue that they've done it before. It doesn't have a crazy effect on the markets or the economy, but that the economy needs it. So here's another article from CNBC. You're seeing this all over the place. And here, Wharton's Jeremy Siegel is much more aggressive, saying it should be between 3.5 and 4%. How does he know that? What does he know? He doesn't. Again, that's where he wants the rates to be. But is it truly reflective of what's happening in the economy? And I think the Fed does know that real inflation is much higher, which is why they've kept it between 5.25 and 5.5%. And just by lowering it, that's going to pour more money into a situation where we already have tons of money in the economy. We have tons of dollars, maybe I should say that. We have tons of dollars already in the economy. Why do we have so many dollars in the economy? Because the Fed keeps spending. Our federal government is still spending more than 2 trillion more. Nothing's changed. Nobody's even talking about real spending cuts. And I'm talking about Trump and Harris. The Democrats have no plans to cut spending. The only plans are to raise taxes. And again, whenever they raise taxes, they just spend it on other stuff as well. And President Trump, all he talks about is just tax cuts, it seems, which sounds good, can increase revenues overall. But there's no way we're going to tax our way out of this situation unless we really go after people and start confiscatory, just taking property from people, which is very scary and very bad overall for the economy long term. So he's arguing for a 75 basis point cut. I don't think the Fed's going to do anything close to that. But again, the Fed is under a lot of pressure to do something. So moving on from that, getting fiscal help. I mean, the federal government is a perfect example of what not to do when it comes to getting your fiscal house in order. So how do we get our own personal fiscal house in order? One of the best ways to do that is to get on top of and manage estimated tax payments. So the federal government has their taxes that they pay or their interest that they're paying on the debt. It's about 1.1 trillion a year that we're paying in towards the national debt, just to interest. That doesn't pay it down. That does not reduce the debt. That just pays the monthly payments on that, like on a credit card. If you just pay the monthly payments, that's all it is. $1.1 trillion with the total national income of around 6.9 trillion. So one in every $7, or it's actually a worse ratio than that. But roughly one in every $7 is going towards the national debt. That's a lot. That's 22% of the total economy. Just going to pay the interest on our national debt. It's going to get worse. So when you look at your own personal situation, this is where I really want to pivot and focus the rest of the situation today. So the number one problem we see is that people aren't paying enough taxes in. So we want to save people. We can help people deal with past due taxes, but the number one thing is that you have to become filing compliant and payment compliant. And it's the payment compliant part that's really hurting most people. So getting your taxes done and knowing which tax years you are, it's just going through the process, going through the steps and getting that done. But a lot of problems are people are too broke. Their money's going elsewhere. They don't have good plans. They don't know how much they need to pay. I talked to someone the other day who was earning between $2,000 and $2,500 a month. This is yesterday. Not paying anything in estimated tax payments. How can she? She's possibly a great candidate for an offer and compromise. We just have to figure out one or two things, but it looks like she'll be a great candidate for an offer and compromise. But they're going to reject it right away, and if she's not paying her current year taxes. So right now in 2024, if you're trying to get caught up for 2024, good luck. It's hard to do. A lot of people try to beat themselves up, especially if you're struggling financially. We're in August now. I can't tell people not to pay the IRS, but it might be a lot easier to get your tax returns filed, get your financial house in order in 2024, and then in January 2025, that's when you pay your estimated tax payments, and you pay them religiously. And we're already 8 months into the year. It's hard to believe that almost the end of the month, 2/3 of the year will have gone by. It's been fast. So that's a tall order to tell people, say, hey, you have to get caught up for all of your taxes for 2024. So this is the time of year where we kind of switch gears a little bit and tell people, look, if you can start making your payments, start developing that habit now, great. But come January of 25, you want to make sure that's where it's going to stop. Because what has to happen is you have to file your 24 returns and include your balance from 24 in 2025. So you're kicking it out to 2025 when you actually can resolve your taxes. And then at that point, that's when you can do an offer. You can consider to do an installment agreement. But if you set up an installment agreement or hardship status now, and you're not current on your estimated tax payments for 2024, you're going to default anything that's set up for you. So too many companies, this is one of the biggest failures I see out there by too many tax companies, is that they do not educate people on their tax responsibilities. They don't inform people, teach people how to not owe moving forward. So right now the IRS is forcing more of that because they won't even consider an offer unless you're current on your estimated tax payments. So big question here. Who needs to file estimated tax payments? If you're going to owe at the end of the year, you need to make estimated tax payments or adjustments to your withholdings. So I'm going to share a few scenarios. First of all, if you're a W-2 earner, could you have a requirement to file estimated tax payments? Absolutely. If you're not having enough withheld throughout the year and you have regular income, then you run afoul of this and you're required to make regular payments throughout the year to make sure you're not going to owe at the end of the year. So that's something. The easiest thing is to go in and go ahead and make those adjustments. But if you were under withholding and not paying enough in the first part of the year, you're going to owe in the latter part of the year. So and then you're going to get hit with an 8% penalty of whatever you didn't pay in throughout the year that you should have. And it's by quarter. So if you didn't pay enough in the first quarter, you're already going to get hit with the penalty for it. Second quarter, deadline was, I believe, July 15th. Third quarter, September 15th. It's actually the 16th because the 15th falls on a Sunday. But this is where I'm talking about it now. So if you're not aware of it, you can start preparing yourself, and we'll start to kind of hammer home and remind my clients and put the word out to taxpayers generally that the next deadline is September 16th. So if you are a wage earner and you're just not having enough withheld, or if something happens, you get money that you weren't expecting. You get a bonus from work, you win the lottery, you get inheritance money isn't taxable, but if you take money out of your 401k, your pension, if you cash out any kind of money like that, and you have a large taxable event, you need to pay your taxes on that, and do that first. Because what always happens is people get a chunk of money. If you don't pay your taxes first, that money's gone in no time. And if you're not paying that, then you get smacked with this 8% penalty on top of it. So in November of 23, Congress, in their great wisdom, no sarcasm alert, they increased the penalty for not paying enough throughout the year from 3% to 8%. It's a huge jump, and there's a lot of people out there that say, oh, I'll just pay my taxes at the end of the year. One, that's how you get into trouble, by digging yourself a hole. But two, it's so much harder to manage your finances and stay on top of things when you are not planning throughout the year. So as taxpayers and responsible citizens, not only does it help you stay on top of your tax liabilities to be ahead of it throughout the year, but it will save you so much headache and grief, and it will help you plan financially for your future, what our government does not do. So do the opposite of what our government is doing. And this will give you financial freedom and peace of mind. So if you aren't withholding enough from your W-2 wage, if something happens where you get a chunk of money you weren't expecting, or that's not normal for you. And the third thing is if you're self-employed, you have a side gig, or you are a business owner. These people get hit the most, and it ranges from realtors to people having just a side gig to people that own and run their own businesses. So we're going to take a short break in just a couple seconds, really hammer home as to why this is important and how it will help protect you and your family financially from these new penalties and interest. Welcome back, everybody, and again, really diving deep into estimating tax payments and why they're so important. So the general idea is, don't just think that, hey, I don't have to pay these. If you're up on your taxes and you're having enough withholding taken out of your paychecks, you can breathe easy. If you're making plenty of estimated tax payments throughout the year, great, you're in a wonderful position. Far too many taxpayers aren't in that position, and this is hurting them, and it's going to hurt bad this year due to the increase, the huge increase from 3 to 8%. Now, it's been very crazy to see how quickly interest rates have climbed, but really focusing on business owners, self-employed. If you have a side gig and you're making extra money on the side, you've got to make sure that you know what you're making and that you're paying taxes based on this. So this one example that I was talking about, she's self-employed, has her own business, only making $2,000 to $2,500 a month. That's not enough to survive on. So she's receiving some family help, etc. But one of the concerns here is she's not going to owe anything in taxes. She doesn't make enough. But she's going to owe in Social Security, Medicare taxes. So self-employment taxes. Again, this is where you get to pay the full amount, 14.9% for Medicare, Social Security, etc. Everything bundled together in that tax bundle for social services. And again, you can't avoid that. It's very regressive. Everybody gets hit by the same percentage up to a certain amount. So, she's going to get taxed on that. And so I did a quick calculation. I was like, look, it's going to be at least $3,000 a year, $3,500 a year. And if you haven't filed for 4 years now, you're looking at $12,000, $15,000 just based on that. With penalties and interest, probably going to be higher. So number one thing is we need to stop the damage moving forward, set her up so we can take care of the balances. But number one thing is that you have to have your books in order. If you're one of the people out there that you just make money and the money comes into your account and then it flows out and you don't know how much you're making, that's what you call a failure to plan. And there's I'm not sure where it comes from, but a famous saying out there that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So people that aren't managing their money, they don't know where their money's coming from, where it's going. They're not good with numbers, which is fine. You don't have to be an expert in numbers. But just like anything else, if you're not a good mechanic, you're not a good plumber, you're not a good electrician, don't do it on your own. Hire an expert. And there are plenty of financial coaches out there. There's plenty of programs out there, that they will take your information directly from your bank account and build a budget for you. They'll make it easy for you. And if you have a larger corporation or company, first things first, you have to have separate business and personal checkings where whatever goes into the business checking is all the business income. Then you subtract out all the business expenses. Your CPA will love you if you do this right. If you're not doing this right, they probably privately hate you or they grouse about you like, this is a mess. Every year we deal with the same mess. They're not improving. They're not learning. And if you come and get audited by the IRS and you're mingling personal and business expenses, the IRS loves to disallow things that are mingled with personal expenses. It makes it so much harder to prove. So again, for your own situation, get your financial house in order. Again, if you're confused by it, you're frustrated by it, hire a professional. If you have questions, we can refer you to professionals across the country. So once you know what your income is, paying regularly quarterly payments becomes a lot easier. Now, a lot of people struggle with quarterly payments. You take that and you add up your income and the taxes over 3 months, it can be like, oh, wow, so much easier when it's taken out of your paycheck bit by bit by bit, which is why the government loves it. They prefer W-2 withholdings. But if you can't do it quarterly, do it monthly. Yes, you're giving the government a little bit of free interest, but it is well worth avoiding the penalties and interest And interest rates are not that good anyway at banks right now. But get in that habit of putting that money. You either send it to the government monthly, or you put it in an account, and that way the money's already there to send off to them quarterly. And get in that habit of making those regular estimated tax payments. The amount of stress that this will take off your shoulders is huge. When I talk to people, talk about these programs and plans, people can breathe again. Like, oh, there is a way to get out of this. Because too many people, they're on this hamster wheel, where they're just going round and round, and they're just owing taxes again every single year. We've got to stop the pattern, figure out how to make it work for you, and then move forward towards resolving the overall taxes. So as far as the deadline, the next deadline is September 15th to have your taxes filed and paid. So again, then you can just use a voucher. So it's not hard to file if you do have payroll taxes, other taxes. And there's also another deadline coming up on September 16th. This is the deadline for corporate returns. We've got to get those in as well. So big issue here is getting in there, getting your books squared away, using a bookkeeper. There are plenty of CPAs that do that, but if you can use a bookkeeper or some kind of program, QuickBooks, etc., you can save yourself a lot of money. Once you see and understand how much business money your business is actually making, you might not be making nearly as good of a profit. It might explain why you're struggling to make ends meet month after month. And there's plenty of people that look at the real books, the real numbers, and say, oh, well, I can change A, B, and C and improve this situation. Or they might make this decision and say, look, this business is actually hurting me. I'm putting more money into it than it's worth. I need to stop. And that's a real situation. But you can't make those decisions unless you're fully informed. I just had someone hire on where they were taking money out of their 401k to support their business and had been doing it for months. It was losing money, but he wanted to make sure his employees were taken care of. But don't chase a bad investment with more money. If the business is losing money, it's losing money. If it's not going to turn around, sometimes the best thing for you and for your finances is to close the business down. There was to do that and avoid a lot of these issues and problems that come up. One of the big things here that people miss, so this is something to stop, pay attention, state taxes. Not only do you have to make estimated tax payments to the federal government, at least quarterly. If you struggle with doing it quarterly, do it monthly. But don't forget the state taxes. States are more aggressive, they're nastier, and by getting on top of your state withholdings as well, you can breathe easy. This is the kind of peace of mind that we give to people. Look, they will work with you if you're current on your estimated tax payments and you're paying those by the deadlines. So when do you need to send that payment in? Well, you don't have all of your information until the end of August. But that means you need to either be looking at your prior year income. So each quarter you have to have an idea of what you made. And the deadline's 2 weeks after that. So just taking a quick look at the calendar, the 30th of August is on, the 31st is on a Saturday. And then you have 2 weeks, and then the funds are due the next Monday. So that does not give you a lot of time to figure out where you're at. So you can go based off of your previous year, last year's income, or you can have your bookkeeping up to date. And I can't tell you how many CPAs I've told that this is the new standard. This is what I want my clients to have. Because either so many clients and taxpayers, they're basing their information and their decisions off of last year's data, which is really old, or you have your books up to date. And more CPAs are understanding, look, we need to do this, we need to take care of this. By having the books up to date, you have good current information as to what's happening with your business. Normally it shouldn't be more than a month late. And that's tough depending on how complicated your business is. But if they're on top of your books and they can produce a P&L, you can look at it and you can analyze it and say, hey, this is what's happening. This is what's hurting me. This is what's costing me money. So the month ends on August 30th, 31st to be exact. And then you have 2 weeks, and then that next Monday on the 16th is when those payments are due. Caveat here, just because if you go to pay on the 16th, it takes time for those payments to process. So get them in. I believe it takes 24 hours. If you get it in over the weekend, that might be fine, but don't think that you can mail a payment in and have it postmarked on the 16th. You can do that. The easiest way is to pay online, irs.gov. Just don't wait till the last day. If you're a procrastinator, set it for the 13th as being the last day. You have to have the payment in by the 13th, which is the previous Friday. So be aware of that. Be ahead. Be prepared. And when you're on top of your financial information, you'll know what's happening with your business. You can make informed business decisions and be on top of and know how much you're going to need for estimated tax payments. So again, you should be in that habit of setting aside monthly what you need, what you think you need based on what you've earned. But again, when you get different kinds of businesses, especially retail, I have another client that just looks to be hiring us. Their income varies widely. They make all their money in December. Christmas is when they make most of their money, and throughout the rest of the year, it's kind of they're just getting by, and then their estimated tax payments should reflect that. So for realtors, especially now, a lot of them are struggling. When you do make a big sale, that's when you should just take that money, set aside, either put it in a separate account, or just send it to the IRS. Get it out of your hands so you're not going to owe. So you're not going to fall back in that same pit of owing year after year. And it's very tough because right now, they're not making a lot of money. They're not selling a lot of homes. The home market is in the doldrums. But if you don't stay on top of it, it's going to be another problem for another year of headache, and the IRS is coming after people more than ever. The bank levies, wage garnishments, all that fun stuff. You want to avoid it. You want to find that peace of mind and find that get on top of it so that you don't have to worry about them coming after you. And the peace of mind we're able to give to people really does help. My office manager tells me that I make people cry. It happens, but usually because I'm not giving them bad news, but I'm giving them the option saying, hey, we can deal with this. We just need to get on top of this. We need to help you learn to be your own best financial expert. And you don't have to do it alone. You shouldn't do it alone. Just like, if I go and do plumbing, I have tried to do some plumbing. My wife told me, hey, why don't you just do this? I broke it. Had to hire a plumber. It's much more expensive. Get advice early. Talk to a bookkeeper. If you don't have a good bookkeeper or CPA, we can refer someone to you. We have networks across the country, and we help people all across the country as well. Make sure we get ahead of this. So preparing for September 16th, that's the next deadline for the third quarter estimated tax payments. Be prepared for it now, because again, we're going to talk about it and mention it as we get closer to the date, so people are aware of it. But right now is when you should be looking at your books for the last couple months, making sure that all you have to do come August 30th is add in August numbers, and you should have a good idea of how much you need to pay and avoid those interest and penalties that people are going to get smacked with at the end of the year. So again, if you have any questions, give us a call, 520-485-7371, or call us. Or you can always find us online at guardiantaxlaw.com, and you can email us from there. You can check out all of our YouTube videos, and get informed. Get informed, be ahead of the curve, and really that's the best thing we can do is offer a team of experts, and it doesn't have to be crazy expensive either. So if you feel like you're being price gouged, get a second opinion. And there are plenty of affordable people out there, and we refer lots of people to them on a regular basis. So it's been a crazy news day. Yesterday was crazy with a market crash, a lot of stuff happening, new VP announcement. Who knows what's going to happen with the election? Everything's crazy. But we're going to continue to give you up-to-date information and help guide you through this process and make sure that when you wrap this up, you can feel good about it. You can sleep again at night, and it makes such a difference in people's lives to get their financial house in order. Now we just got to scream and yell at Congress to do the same and get our federal house in order, because again, our federal financial house is an absolute disaster, which is why we're paying so much in credit and on the interest on our debt. But that's a whole nother topic, and that's probably unicorn dreaming. So have a great day, everybody. If you have questions, reach out to us, but we will be back tomorrow to cover more breaking news, but also talk about how to manage your finances, your taxes, and again, our whole goal is to make taxes easy. So take care, and we'll see you tomorrow.